If Alabama wants to get back to the playoff, they should make a move at offensive coordinator.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether you win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Can Notre Dame make it to the national championship game? For the first time in well over a decade, I'll lay out my keys and have my prediction for Notre Dame and Penn State in the semifinal. And Arizona State was almost in the semifinal. Can they get to that same sort of level next year with Sam Leavitt returning? That's coming up on today's show. But let's start with Alabama. Kalen DeBoer, go hire Ryan Grubb. Just do it. Don't overthink the room. Sometimes when you try to metaphorically get the band back together, it doesn't go as planned. Look at what the Jets just tried to do. I mean, the Jets are one of the worst organizations in all of sports. They interviewed Rex Ryan again, which is kind of funny. But you know what? At this point, who cares? Let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But they were trying to make Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams work like it used to. They were trying to recapture the glory days. Go back in time and say, 2018, come back to us in 2024. Give me that version of those two players and we'll be off and run. And it was a mess. And it didn't work. And Rodgers wasn't what he used to be. And Adams doesn't look like what he used to be. Sometimes those sorts of moves have that feel from the outset. When Gruden originally got hired to the Raiders, been a long time since you've coached there, bud. Those sorts of things, I'm not a fan of. But Kalen DeBoer reuniting with Ryan Grubb would make all the sense in the world. And it wouldn't be something where you're reaching for a distant past. Mac Brown at North Carolina felt like you were reaching for the past. This wouldn't be one of those moves. This would be a coordinator and head coach reunited who maybe shouldn't have been separated in the first place, depending on your perspective. As a Seahawks fan, I have many thoughts on Ryan Grubb. Here's what I know, though, as a college football fan. In the last 3 years that Ryan Grubb has been an offensive coordinator, his offenses, matched with Kalen DeBoer as a head coach, of course, one at Fresno State and two at Washington, averaged well over 300 yards passing. I know those two guys are a great mix. I've seen it. Not 5, 10, 2 years ago was the last time on the heels of a 3-year run in which the passing attack was absolutely and utterly dominant with a couple of different NFL caliber quarterbacks, to be sure, but Keelan Russell's coming in and it looks like that he's got that sort of potential, that sort of upside for the Crimson Tide. So that's the first part of it. You're not reaching at the past. The second part of it is Alabama's undergoing a quarterback change. I talked about it on a previous episode of the show where I actually think by the end of next season, Alabama can get more out of their quarterback position than they were getting out of Jalen Milroe, certainly from a passing standpoint. They averaged less than 250 passing yards a game this year. That's not what Kalen DeBoer wants to do. I wondered several times on the show going into this year, would Milroe and DeBoer work? Milroe's a runner. DeBoer wants pocket guys. That's what Jake Haener was at Fresno State. That's what Penix was at Washington. That's not really Milroe's game. And early in the season, it looked like the answer was, no, they're going to figure it out. Nick Sheridan's the offensive coordinator after Coach Huff and Coach Grubb decided, no, we want to stay in the Pacific Northwest, going to the Seahawks. And Coach Huff is still with the Seahawks, and Ryan Grubb is not after one season. So the headline of hiring a fired offensive coordinator might not look great, but anybody who knows, just a smidge of the backstory between these two knows that this is the right move to go down. But as the season went on, we saw those issues arise. Milroe isn't a great quarterback from the pocket. I don't think his NFL prospects are very good because he's still learning how to stand in between the tackles and behind your front three offensive linemen and deliver the ball consistently and accurately to all three levels of the field. So that match never felt like it was great. But with Alabama undergoing a reset at the quarterback position, that feels like the time you would want to bring in a new offensive coordinator if the right hire is out there. And I certainly feel like he is. So he goes to the Seahawks for a year, Ryan Grubb does, and breaks up the dream team with Kalen DeBoer, and it doesn't work out for him this year. Now, the Seahawks ended up 10-7. He had Geno Smith as his quarterback, who's capable, but also does some pretty boneheaded things. The sorts of boneheaded decisions that I don't think were a function of Ryan Grubb's coaching. Because in 2 years with Penix and another with Jake Haener, I didn't see those sorts of decisions. So it's not a theme of Ryan Grubb coached and coordinated quarterbacks to make those throws. That's a Geno Smith thing. Because some of the throws that led to costly interceptions that cost my Seahawks a chance at the playoffs this year were just some of the most boneheaded decisions you could have ever arrived at. And frankly, I was shocked that Grubb was let go because he was also trying to coordinate an offense with lead running back in Kenneth Walker, who's great, but wasn't healthy throughout the course of the year. They've got a good backup in Zach Charbonnet. But he was trying to work with an offensive line that was putrid. They had no push in the run game. That's not Grubb's specialty, to be sure. They had absolutely positively no push. And they could not consistently protect Geno Smith. And they had injuries, and it was a revolving door. So you handed Ryan Grubb a suboptimal situation, and he showed that he's got a wide receiver in Jackson Smith-Njigba who by the end of the year was playing like a first-round fantasy draft pick because the offense was starting to really click and hit on all cylinders. But when I watched Seattle this year, I did not feel that Ryan Grubb had lost his touch, that what we saw at Washington was a fluke lightning in a bottle. No, I liked Ryan Grubb. I actually didn't want the Seahawks to get rid of him as the offense coordinator, but they did. This makes all the sense in the world. You're resetting a quarterback, you're resetting an offensive coordinator. I know that Bama just had a season where the coaching staff was, perhaps not up to the standard, but you could still look at the offense and say, well, almost 34 points a game for Nick Sheridan as the offensive coordinator. There's a reason that Sheridan was the wide receivers coach behind Ryan Grubb in the pecking order of coaches. He was an assistant and Grubb was a coordinator. There's a reason. There's a reason. If you're Kalen DeBoer, if I were Kalen DeBoer, I go make this move. I go make this move to better my chances to get to the playoff in 2025. Because if Alabama doesn't get there next season, can you imagine the pressure that is going to be put upon that staff? They won't be fired because they're too good to have some disastrous losing record season. They've got too much talent. They've recruited too well. No, nothing like that is going to happen. But if they go 9-3 again and miss the college football playoff in the 12-team era, 2026 becomes a do-or-die campaign for Kalen DeBoer. I don't want to risk that with someone who is kind of still learning how to be an offense coordinator. There's an adjustment. There's a growth period when you step into that sort of role. No such growth is required. No such adjustment phase is needed for Ryan Grubb. He's been doing this for quite a while. I think you go make this hire, better your playoff chances for 2025, and get him working with a quarterback who is going to be your guy of the future, whoever that may be. Maybe it's Ty Simpson. I don't think anything's been decided in the Alabama quarterback room. But if it's Russell coming in as the 5-star true freshman, I'd want to have an offense coordinator that I feel good about. And you have to feel good about what Ryan Grubb has done and what he can do in the passing game for Alabama. So if I'm Kalen DeBoer, let's get it back together. It was a one-off. Hey, all's forgiven. He was going to be the offense coordinator at Alabama once upon a time. I think it's about time that gets reunited. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter. So Notre Dame is just winning football games. They have won 12 consecutive football games, as a matter of fact. That's a lot. That's a lot. I think they're going to make it 13. And I think that you're going to like Rocket Money. So Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And if you have subscriptions that you're paying for twice, you might not know about it. That's not good. You can't have that, folks. That's where Rocket Money comes in and brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So the unwanted subscriptions component, that's just one thing that they do, but they're doing other things as well. So to reach your financial goals, cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Those are two things that you should be doing. Make that your New Year's resolution post New Year's, however many days. Yeah, you get the point. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So I think Notre Dame is going to beat Penn State and advance to the national championship game. 21-17, that's my score prediction here. Why? When you look at what the Irish have done over the last several months, they are just playing such great complementary football. That doesn't mean all three phases are performing at the same level, but special teams has been an A+, defense has been an A, and the offense, I'd say, has been a B to B-. I think the special teams advantage in this game is squarely in the camp of Notre Dame compared to Penn State. That's not the primary factor, but it is one of my top reasons. The forgotten side of the ball that, by the way, allowed Notre Dame to break open their quarterfinal game against Georgia previously. So that's first reason. The second reason is Jeremiah Love is questionable going into this game. That concerns me. That concerns me. Abdul Carter is questionable going into this game for Penn State. That concerns me. I'll touch on that more in a moment. But Jadarian Price and Riley Leonard combined have been phenomenal this year. Leonard's averaging over 5.5 yards a carry. Price is at 6.5 yards a carry so far this season. And you know that Notre Dame wants to come out and run the ball. So if this gets into a shootout, which I don't think the Notre Dame defense is going to allow to have happen, then the edge goes to Penn State. I trust Drew Aller to throw the ball all over the field to Tyler Warren and the running backs and occasionally a wide receiver more than I trust Riley Leonard to throw the ball to, anyone. Remember, Notre Dame is attempting to become the first national champion since 2009 Alabama to average less than 200 passing yards per game. I do get the sense that that's going to catch up to them eventually, but that's not how they're winning this game. If they take on Ohio State, which I suspect they will, in the national championship game, then you could have the problem. Because I don't know that it matters how good your secondary or defense is. Jeremiah Smith is an alien, Emeka Ibuka is great, and Carnell Tate is one of the better number 3 wide receivers in all of college football. So when you go up against those guys, yeah, you might have to just score a lot of points, and I don't know that Notre Dame is fit to do that. But in this game against Penn State, their offense has absolutely been humming. I mean, it wasn't perfect per se against Boise State. The fumble, I think, really shifted that game. If Drew Aller doesn't fumble that ball and Boise State gets the ball to drive down the field, Penn State could run away with that game. Instead, they didn't. It was tight. It was competitive. This is a Notre Dame defense that has been really good at forcing turnovers. I think they will get at least one in this game. I won't be surprised if it's 2. But Penn State has to find a way to turn this football game into a fireworks show. And Notre Dame wants to make it, what do they call it in the longest yard? The backyard, et cetera, et cetera. When they're just pitching the ball around in the mud. That's what Notre Dame wants to do. They want it to be ugly. They want to muck it up. They want this game to just be a complete and total repeat of what happened in the quarterfinal round against Georgia. Close game at the half, defense makes a play, special teams comes up big, then they run away control, and they lean on the defense in the ground game to run out the clock. So Abdul Carter's absence in this game, quite frankly, would not be felt as significantly to me as the absence of Jeremiah Love. But I do get the sense both teams are capable of overcoming the absence or reduced impact of either one in order to win. The reason I go with Notre Dame is despite absences, and there are several on that side of the ball, that Notre Dame defense is no joke. They're missing guys along the defensive line. I just watched them harass Georgia. And is Georgia's offensive line great? No. I think Penn State's is probably a touch better. But I have watched Notre Dame's defense too many times to fall for the idea that, well, suddenly that's going to catch up to them here. Penn State could put together a couple drives. They could do pretty well. I don't see them suddenly exploding in this game. The Notre Dame defense, to me, is the reason that the Irish go on to win. I don't love the pun not intended there. I'm not crazy about making this pick, Notre Dame 21-17. I'm not crazy about it with Jeremiah Love's status up in the air. And even if he does play, don't think he's going to be able to be at 100%. I think what Notre Dame will then do is they'll rely even more on Riley Leonard. And you will look at this offense and it might remind you of Jaden Daniels a year ago, who routinely, with the same offense coordinator, Mike Denbrock, he routinely led LSU in rushing yards. He was, I'm pretty sure, their leading rusher throughout the course of the season en route to the Heisman Trophy. You might see that a lot. You might see a game plan that resembles what Georgia Tech rolled out time and again this season with Haynes King at quarterback. And it got him dinged up a little bit, but they weren't prolific throwing the ball down the field. But Notre Dame's offense, on the one hand, is one-dimensional in that they're not going to have a consistent vertical passing game. Riley Leonard will have to make some throws and a couple of key spots he'll have to execute. But what Notre Dame's offense, I think, does a good job of, and you'll really see in this game, is they're running the ball, but they're not running it the same way. Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, now with Sharon Moore, they run the ball the same way, and they just have better linemen, scheme, play call, running backs, all of that stuff. Notre Dame can get a little bit shiftier with it, can be a little bit more creative, and incorporate the quarterback run. And I fully expect them to in this game. And defensively for Notre Dame, there is not just one key. Because the key that goes around the most that I hear on plenty of other shows is, got to slow down Tyler Warren, got to slow down. That's the number one key. That's a number one key. Can we call it 1A, 1B for what's important in this game? Because Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are phenomenal. Plenty of attention gets rightfully paid to Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, but Nick Singleton, Katron Allen might be every bit as good as those guys and can take over games, and they spell each other regularly to stay fresh. So if I am Notre Dame scheming up a defensive game plan, yeah, I want to take away 44, but frankly, I'm more concerned with the idea of 13-10 allowing Penn State to be balanced. That's what Andy Kotelnicki's offense has always been when it's at its most dangerous, is they can run the ball and then they can set up play action with all the motion and the creative shifts and take shots down the field. That's how they got Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. They ran the ball incredibly well. Incredibly well. And so when they went play action, Oregon was biting on it, created openings on the back end, and Ohio State was able to exploit that as well. But I think first and foremost, Notre Dame has got to take away 13-10 as best they can. You're not going to contain them entirely and bottle them up. They're too good of players, and Penn State's offensive line is really underrated. They're too good for that. But if Notre Dame cannot allow Penn State to dominate on the ground, if they're just okay, if they can be neutral, if they can work it to, I'm trying to think of a chess term. When you can't, your kings are just battling back and forth. Oh, gosh, my brother's going to kill me for not remembering that term. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about there. They just need to not lose in that matchup, and I think Notre Dame will go on to win the game. 21-17, low-scoring affair. Notre Dame forces at least one turnover I'll call it 2, and they get the win to go to the national championship game. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. I really can't believe what is the term for that? It's yeah. I'm going to be doing some Googling after this show, folks. You're going to be Googling Sam Leavitt next year. So Arizona State stunned us all this year, right? I had them going over their preseason win total, but by a whole half a game. Their win total is 4.5. I had them winning 5 games. They won a few more than that, 11 of them to be exact, including the Big 12 championship. So are they going to be able to run it back next year, or was this just a fun story, flash in the pan, and they will regress back to the mean in 2025 with their vastly inferior roster to everybody else? They, could have beaten Texas and had several opportunities to do so, but let's just overlook that fact for now and focus on it in the landscape of the Big 12. Sam Leavitt is coming back. That's a pretty significant piece. Now, Cameron Scadaboo sadly cannot. The People's running back, trademarked by my guy Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils, he is not going to return to college football. He's out of eligibility. He's going to the NFL draft. I think it's just a shame. It's a shame we only got 1 true year of Scadaboo. He was doing all of the things that he did this year last season. It's just that Arizona State was a mess. You know why they were able to give him the ball and let him throw it down the field? Because last year, the quarterback situation got so absurdly beat up and injured, they didn't have a quarterback to snap the ball to. So they snapped it to Cameron Scadaboo and Jalen Conyers. True story. They went 3-9, and when they had a real quarterback and in Sam Leavitt come in, suddenly they were better offensively. Oh my, who could have foreseen? So Leavitt returning is big. Now, there was a report, I believe it was from Pete Nakos of On3, that Leavitt turned down some bigger NIL offers to go to other schools. This is awesome. This is awesome. I am not anti-college athletes being able to make money based on the work they put in. But one thing that frustrates a lot of college football fans who I come across, and I have a hard time doing anything but empathizing with them, is when you're at a place like Arizona State that has long been referred to as a sleeping giant, but has never fully realized its potential and could very well be on the way to doing so if Kenny Dillingham continues to activate the Valley, it can still be hard to keep up. Financially, Arizona State right now, despite the efforts that Kenny Dillingham has put in time and again to make sure Arizona State is as competitive financially as they possibly can be in this money-driven world of college football that we've created, they still can't offer as much right now. Maybe one day they could, but if a heavy hitter wants to come in with a bigger offer, they can make it, and they can outbid him. But I applaud Sam Leavitt for sticking around with Arizona State because, he just played his redshirt freshman season, right? I have no idea what his long-term goals are, NFL draft prospects or anything, but he's going to be at Arizona State for at least 1 more year. If you're trying to build an offense, that's usually a good foundation. Pretty good. Pretty good. Start with, the most important position in all of sports. And Leavitt this year was so much better than people realize. 62%, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and just under 2,900 yards in 13 games for the Sun Devils this year. The Sugar Bowl was not necessarily his best performance. Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, I don't know. They're all blending together. Pretty sure it was a Sugar Bowl. Or Peach Bowl. Peach Bowl? I think it was a Peach Bowl. Yeah. Let's go with Peach Bowl. Pretty sure that's right, but playoff quarterfinal game is all you care about. He was 24 of 46, did not throw a touchdown, did throw an interception. But they're not in that spot without Sam Leavitt or Cam Scadaboo. So now they have to go about trying to replace one of those guys. Well, that's a heck of a lot better than replacing 2 of those guys. And so a guy they've brought in a running back, I'm intrigued, shall we say. Kanye Udo. Great name. Just a great college football name. Went for over 1,100 yards this year running for Army. So being a workload back, that's not going to be a concern. Frankly, I thought as a transfer prospect, he was a little underrated. There's been a lot of discussion online about transfer portal rankings and underrating guys in certain conferences compared to other leagues. I don't buy into that particular narrative wholesale, but I do think there are individual examples you can highlight and say, why wasn't that guy this For example, Mekhi Hughes goes from Tulane to Oregon to replace Jordan James, their starting running back who went to the NFL. Hughes went for over 1,400 yards this year and was a 4-star prospect. And in the eyes of 24/7 as a transfer. And he was their number 1 overall guy. Udo was phenomenal for Army this year. Also had a 1,000-plus yard season. Why is he only a 3-star transfer? I don't know. There's a lot to that. I'm just pointing it out to say that one caught me by surprise. And don't let the star rating or lack of star rating there allow you to think that it's just kind of a guy. It's just kind of a depth piece. No, that looks like a workhorse back to me. That looks like a workhorse back. So you have a running back who's proven he can carry a high volume, and certainly they have other guys in the room who are capable of running the football there. And as great as Cameron Scadaboo was, history tends to show you, though there's a bit of a changing in the winds in college and the NFL along this front, running backs are more replaceable than some other positions. But you know what Arizona State showed in the last couple of games without their leading receiver? That they've got some talent at wideout and that they can throw the ball and that your quarterback matters a whole heck of a lot more than the wide receivers do. But Jordan Tyson should be back in Tempe next year. He was on an absolute tear. Does everybody understand how good Jordan Tyson was for the 4 games leading up to him getting hurt? 5 games, really, 6 games, 7 games. Yeah, he was really good. Here, I'll just give you his last 4 since they've all got the triple-digit factor. The one before this stretch was 7 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. 12 for 176 and 2 touchdowns. That was at number 16 Kansas State. 9 for 125. That was against 14th ranked BYU. Then in their rivalry game, 8 for 143 and a touchdown. Arizona State didn't have him for the Big 12 championship game when they blew out Iowa State, or the quarterfinal game against Texas where they almost pulled off the upset. So if Tyson comes back and Leavitt is there and you've got options at running back, that's a pretty good foundation. And oh, by the way, you're going to have the same 3 top coaches. Kenny Dillingham, back at head coach. Marcus Arroyo, back at offensive coordinator. Didn't love every play that he called in that quarterfinal game, particularly on 4th and short. There was a lack of creativity there. But coaches, like players, can learn and evolve from their mistakes. And Brian Ward defensively, who got off to kind of a rough start in that quarterfinal game, and then all of a sudden turned it on in a big way. Play call at the end wasn't the right one, it turns out. Or was it? Did Quinn Ewers just make a better call on the other side? So then you look at Arizona State's recruiting rankings for the last couple of years, not blowing you away. Transfer portal rankings, they're not making a ton of noise. But again, couple of nice additions. Jalen Moss has been at Fresno State for the last couple of years. Wide receiver. They bring him in to supplement their quarterback, who they look like they are building around to give not just a run game, but, perimeter targets that can catch the football. Turns out that is indeed helpful for a guy playing the quarterback position. Moss has been over 500 yards each of the last 2 years at Fresno State. Heck, he's got 2 years of eligibility left if he wants to use them both in Tempe. So to bring this back to the question that I kind of posed earlier in the show, does this mean Arizona State's expectation is to be the Big 12 championship level? I don't share that particular belief that that's the expectation. That's a goal. That looks attainable. What Kenny Dillingham is doing looks incredibly sustainable. Arizona State's roster is only going to get better. It's not going to get worse than what it was this year. So they should be in the mix every year. But to have the expectation of a Big 12 conference championship, that requires a prolonged run of success that Kenny Dillingham just got 1 year's worth of accomplishing. So you keep stacking, you do this for 5 to 7 years, then in that 8th year, you say, yeah, it's Big 12 championship or bust every year because look at what they've done for the last 5 or 6 years. But right now, For Arizona State, I don't think you need to worry about such things. Focus on what is right in front of you. Fill the holes you got in the roster, see where you can get better, and appreciate the fact that you have a quarterback who really wants to be in Tempe. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.